Ja, det kan jeg gjøre som et litt. Så sender den på Insta. Jeg kan sende den på Messenger. Jeg må sende den på Messenger. Men er du... Ja, du må... Vent da, gå tilbake der. Ta hvor det er. Ja, vi har jo der, ja, det er live.
Ja.
All the emotion about it. To be, yeah, to be in the middle of that, and then
Hvis du får det med, så får du til at
somehow I lost it as a song. It's to stay and 3 days, 4 days, and then I started hitchhiking. But I have such a Så Håvard var på vei, men han ble skjedd. In hindsight, okay. I wish I really absorbed.
Har du jobbat med Arne?
Jeg har ikke tidligere jobbet med han som fotograf, men han engasjerte meg til å gjøre til en nordlys. Og da ble jeg jo klar over at han forvaltet til Teigen i Norge, som blant annet har veldig mange bilder. Så det var gjennom han at vi fikk So that's why I'm før jeg flyttet dit. Han kjøpte noen gitareffektbokser av meg. Og så har vi holdt kontakten. Han skal spille på en sånn
You just found you're not because I was just moving in Cambridge and I was just going to I traveling It doesn't det går mulig at vi har lest litt grann. Jeg tenker altså hvis samtalen mellom så det er There's no Googling. No, I know, but it's possible.
Okay, så det blir det overføring av lyd som kommer?
Nei, vi har mikrofonen der, så den gjør ikke noe om
de kablene der er jo der det skjer selvfølgelig.
Ja, men vi kan ha
det er ikke kamera jeg snakker om, det er litt sånn i kabler.
Ja.
De kablene må være et sted.
Ja, men det går det greit nå?
Jeg synes det går fint.
Tror det går fint?
All right.
Hører alle meg? Kan alle høre meg?
Yeah.
We're going to be speaking in English as we would like to have, we would like everybody who attend to be able to follow the conversation. And that would be preferable to speak in English. First of all, welcome to this conversation with Alexander Rishaug. I know all of you, but my name is Leif Magne Tangen. I'm intendant, which is director at Tromsø Kunstforening in Tromsø. And we'll be talking about Alexander's latest project, which is, for those of you who haven't seen it, this one, a double LP with a publication. And I'm going to try to read the title. It's Y, 59 degrees, 54 minutes, 54.76 seconds north, 10 degrees, 45 minutes, and 46.03 seconds east. It consists of a recording made in October, or two recordings made in October 2017, the two last days, I think it is, of October 2017, from the Høyblokka.
It's 8 recordings, but it's
8 recordings.
yeah, done during 2 days, or 2 nights actually.
8 recordings done during 2 nights. First of all, I would just like to say thank you for having us. Well, you know, the normal things, we're in our Corona times, so keep distance, stay to your cohorts, etc., etc., etc. Welcome, Alexander.
Thank you.
We will also be playing we'll be playing 3 recordings of 3 tracks of the 8 tracks on the double LP. So during the conversations we'll have breaks, and we'll also end, I think, with a track. So in total 3 tracks, so 21 minutes in total, 24? It's 8 minutes each, is that correct? Yeah. Anyway, maybe I could start with a short introduction, and then we could talk about the project afterwards. On your website you describe yourself as a sound artist and a composer, and I would call you an artist and place you within the contemporary art or visual arts field in Norwegian billedkunstfelt, and with sound as a medium. So I guess my first question would be if medium has always been your chosen, or if sound has always been your chosen medium, or if it's something that you came to later on. Did you start somewhere else, or did you always work with sound?
I guess when I started with art, it was mainly like visual art, drawing and painting, and I was playing music, but I didn't really think of it as art or as an art expression. Maybe, of course, it's an expression, but it was like 2 separate things, or 2 separate activities that I was working with at the same time. And then later, when I came into the art academy in Trondheim around 96, I decided to work more specifically on sound, and just after that it's been more and more sound and music.
Very good. That means you answered the question I would have followed up with, what would be your main field currently, but maybe you could, how would you describe beyond using the word sound artist, how would you describe in more, say, in more than a few words, your current praxis as it has established, let's say, the last 10 years?
So people often ask, are you a musician or are you an artist? And I think it's good to say that I'm a sound artist, because it's it includes the possibility of being both, and that also kind of reflects my praxis. And through the years, I've been composing music for dance, theater, film. I've been doing installations. I play techno. So for me, it has been important to establish a practice that's quite broad.
Thank you, Arne. Following up on that, it might actually be worth mentioning that I'm just going to call the record or the project Y from now on. That it is made in, or at least published in collaboration with the Oslo Biennial First Edition 2019-2024, which will now be cut, well, it will be cut short to 2022, and then distributed by Motto Distribution. But you're currently also, I've noticed you collaborate quite a bit, and you currently are involved in two projects which are to be seen both in, well, one in Bergen, at the Bergen Kunstforening as part of the Johan Ango exhibition, if I'm not mistaken, and also part of the Høstutstilling in Oslo by collaboration with also Løvgren and someone else. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Could you also say, could you just, or let me put it differently, is collaboration something that comes natural, or is something that you do frequently? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess it comes natural, and I do it frequently at the same time. But to jump back to this specific project, it was actually initiated by myself, and I did apply for funding from Uro, which was a project by Koro for temporary art projects in the public, or in public space. And I guess we will come back to that later also. But I got money to do the project, but when I contacted Statsbygg, they said that I couldn't access the building.
I would like to start, I mean, we've done a brief introduction of Alexander, at least I have tried, and he has tried. I would like to, for those who haven't listened to the record, and obviously these aren't perfect circumstances to listening to Alexander's record, I would like us to take 8 minutes and listen to the first track on the first side of the record, which is the A1. It's recorded in Høyblokka, Justisdepartementet, 12th etasje, from 5:38 a.m. I guess, and the 29th of October 2017. So it's 8 minutes.
Is it okay if I shut off the lights?
Please do.
Yeah.
before we move on, I would like you, could you describe what we just heard?
I guess everyone has a subjective experience of what they heard, but basically this was a recording of 12th floor. So when we came, because when I was in Høyblokka, I had a photographer and an assistant with me, and also we had guards. So when we came into the one of the floors, it's basically one big space. All the walls and furniture and interior that used to be there was gone. So and also what you hear is, because many of the windows, of course, were broken, so you can hear the kind of plastic cloth on the outside shaken by the wind. You also hear some ventilation from the outside. This recording is one of the pure recordings, like more kind of straightforward room recordings, a bit different from some of the other recordings that comes later.
All right, thank you. Why is a double LP with a publication? And I think it has some specific, well, I call it part of the myths of the project. It's high modernistic and governmental architecture from the mid-20th century in the center of Oslo. Terrorist attack, a almost more or less political thriller concerning the future of one of the buildings in the governmental square, the Y building, which is now being concluded and also put into motion. It's been torn down, but also a bureaucratical, well, a drama, I would say. But again, this is what I would describe as part of the myth of the project, and not the project as, for instance, when we now listen to it, as you mentioned, the subjective experience that each and every one of us has. But you mentioned, either to me or somewhere else, that it was important to you to reflect on or reflect the condition of the building, also its future or its past and future. And correct me, of course, I'm translating from Norwegian to English as I'm speaking some of the questions. And I would like to come back to the publication later on, but I guess it was meant as a question. Were you, was it important for you to reflect the building's condition currently, but also looking back and forward, if possible, within the compounds of this specific project?
Yeah, I guess that was my main focus, was to investigate those things. And I used to tell my friends that I'm going to Høyblokka and to record ghosts, and of course that could be a very terrible thought, but it was meant as a joke. But when you go into these kind of conditions or places, you have to be open-minded and also let things happen. And of course, it was a bit scary to be there in the beginning, but after a while, I started to find some inner peace. And actually, while I was recording, I was meditating in the space, not consciously, but as a part of the listening process. But of course, it was already decided back then in 2017 that Høyblokka was going to be teared down, but or at least that was the what's it called? Like the planners had said that they recommended it, and in a way, like, since I started with the project in 2017 and then until now, I felt many times that it'd been kind of in and out of actuality in a way. And then, of course, now when it was decided that the Høyblokka is going to be tear down, it became very, like actual, even though the recordings are not from Høyblokka, it's from Høyblokka. But my initial plan was actually to record Høyblokka as well, but I didn't get the permission to do that, but I got permission to get into Høyblokka only. And also my plan was maybe to do recordings for a whole year, during different times of the day, different seasons, to investigate the house. But I got to this.
Well, I mean, that makes it a very specific, well, time-specific, if not like almost like a time-stamped, if you like, listening or recording experience of Høyblokka as it was during those, in those 8 recordings, during those 2 nights. You mentioned that you meditated during the recording sessions during those 2 nights. If I remember correctly, in an interview you did with, upon the release of the record a few months ago, you did there was one interview I read from the Norwegian magazine Subject, or in the Norwegian magazine Subject, where you mentioned that before COVID came into, locked down Norway basically, or the whole world, you wanted to do the release as in a darkened cinema space. Sorry. I lost my. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but it was planned to be in the cinema, but actually it was not my idea. It was.
Because that would also be a meditating if it
yeah,
would
I
be
know,
dark.
but this was the Oslo Biennial's idea, because actually my idea was to do a sound installation in beside, like on the other side of the canteen that were where the car that were parked at, when the bomb went off. There is a similar space that was connected to the 22nd of July Center. And this space has a lot of big windows. And actually my plan was to do to use the windows as speakers and play play maybe not the album, but some of the tracks through there. But the Oslo Biennial, they didn't want that. So then we kind of made I made a compromise to be able to finish the album, and then we decided to do this screening in the cinema instead. But because of COVID-19, we decided to do an online stream. Yeah. And I was a bit like, how can we deal with this? Should we just, should we have a Q&A like this and stream it? But in the end I decided to make a visual, very minimal frame, mostly darkness, focusing on the listening situation. And I think it worked well in the end. It wasn't as bad as I
feared.
As I feared, yeah.
Yep. By the way, to those who are attending, and also those of you who are, digital streaming, if there's questions, we're going to have a question session for those who wants to ask questions towards the end. One of the, I wanted to talk a little bit, or if possible, to talk to you a little bit about how listening situations could be. I mean, it is on physical format, so on an LP, but also it's released on Bandcamp and SoundCloud. I'm not sure if there is also other digital channels, but that's where I have been listening to it. And me personally, I've been listening to the album. I hope it's okay that I call it an album. But I've been listening to.
That's fine.
to the album in 2 ways. I listened to the LP, the double LP, the A to D side, but I've been mostly having it on my ear while walking or doing work and listening to the, especially at work, to be honest, currently. And walking around listening to why I reached sometimes points where I didn't know I was, because it has at least for me, and also back to meditating, but also it has a drone effect, a certain part of it, at least to my mind, I would then not notice anymore that I was listening to the record until people were talking to me and I had no idea what they were saying. I couldn't hear anything. And it put me in a very different, walking through rooms and listening to other rooms was a concept I liked quite a bit, to be honest. And it also set me outside of my own everyday life and also the building I'm normally walking around in. So to sum up, do you have any thoughts about listening situations beyond what you just described, what you would prefer, what you would like to have had the installation to begin with and the proposed from cinema and then the digital streaming?
When you release an album, it's it has its life on its own.
Yeah.
So of course I can't decide how people should listen to it, but please don't listen to it at computer speakers, because it's so much of the bass that's not there. So if that could be like a recommendation, But of course, it's a very different listening experience to listen to it on digital, because then it's like one stream. If you have a vinyl, you have to turn the sides. Personally, I prefer vinyl, but because I like the whole ritual of turning the sides, and it's like an activity. But I think it's great that you enjoy listening to it in other spaces. So, and with headphones, please do that.
Speaking of listening, maybe we should take the next track. It's the C-side, and the first track on the C-side, which is also from Høyblokka, and it's the kitchen on the 15th floor. It's from 7:31 a.m. on the 29th of October 2017, and it's also 8 minutes long. I would like to talk a little bit about not only the physical format, but the physical object, which I do, to a very high degree, consider the sort of the, at least one of the end results of the project, which is, it's a double LP. Well, I have only two hands, but it's a double LP. This is the cover, and then it also consists of a publication, a cloth publication with essay or introduction, and well, I can't show you the photographs properly, but I think a set of 22 photographs, mainly of photographer Arne B. Langleite. And I was thinking a little bit about the well, of course, also the 8-track, and all the photographs are in black and white. And if you look on the front photograph of the record, it's the Høyblokka prior to 1990. According to my memory, that's when they added the two last floors, which are currently still to be seen. And it's still something very. It's obviously, I would again go back to the word meditative, but it's also something very contemporary about using black and white and also cloth, and so also there's a photograph of you meditating, if I'm not mistaken, as a part of the series. Instead of when you look 20 years back, black and white photography was looking back, it was retrospective, it was always something which was looking towards the past, and it doesn't feel like this anymore. Now, I'm not going into a conversation, or I mean, you're more than welcome to whether or not black and white photography is something contemporary or not, to looking back and forward, but it's something very classical about, I find, the way the design, but also how the whole project, as in the format of a object, a double LP is put together. So maybe you could say something about the double LP and what type of aspects were important for you while working on it, and if you want to, of course, if there's anything you would like to reflect on now, a few months after you released the record, how you see it's perceived, or what you think and interpret, or if you like the tactile part of it.
Yeah, for some reason I have always seen the images on the cover in black and white, yeah, when I got the idea initially. I guess you could say it's contemporary, or you could say it's what was the word you used? Like
well, looking back,
yeah.
I can't remember. Oh yeah, it's
retrospective. Yeah. But I also wanted it to be a bit timeless in a way. And for example, when Arne B. Langleite took the photos, they are actually in color.
Yeah.
So it's my choice to choose them in black and white. It's not his.
Yeah.
Regarding the front cover, which are from the 60s, taken by Teigen's photo atelier, we tried to have some of the more how do you say, some of the photos from when we were there, but I thought they were too brutal in a way.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have this vision of the place, yeah, or the site, and then if you turn around, you have one of the walls from the inside when we were there in 2017.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's part of the the visual or aesthetical concept.
And
but regarding the 8 tracks, it
yes,
was a bit. I wouldn't say random, but because I have a lot of hours of recordings, and in that material there were some tracks that were kind of sticking out, and I think that was those 8 tracks. So the reason why I chose 8 minutes was because I think 5 minutes is a bit short, 10 minutes is a bit too long, yeah, so 8 minutes, yeah, in between. So, and also like the fade outs, it was, or the fade ins, like 1 minute fade in, was also just something that I tried, but I thought it was very nice, this transition from being one place and slowly transforming into another.
Yeah.
So it was not like a big grand idea I had from the start. It kind of happened intuitively when I was working with the material.
Not quite letting go of the photographs. I find we could, for instance, call the photographs a photographic essay, and it seems to document, or it does document, the process you were in when you were in situ recording. I mentioned you meditating. I should also mention that Arne B later had a solo show at TKF in 2009. It very much follows the process, and it also shows that it's not a grand, or it's not a master plan, or at least that's how I read the photograph. That's also how I listen to the tracks. As you described, you said not random, but also not a grand master plan. That's also how I do not feel when I listen to the recording that I'm like it's a completely map covering each room, each space, each aspect, every possible every part of the ventilation system, every window, every wall, etc., etc. It feels like there's snapshots, although they're long. They're 8 minutes long, so that's a long for a period of listening to, well, nothing, if you like. But still, it feels very much like you go in and you pay attention, and then you zoom out again, if you like. We're not going to continue for very much long, few hours. But sorry, that was a joke. But a small anecdote. The last few days, I've been thinking about. I'm just going to try to translate what I wrote in Norwegian about John Cage and his description then when he did find himself in an echoic chamber. The room that does not reflect sound, and he could hear two type of sounds. He could hear a high pitching and a low pitching, and the low pitching was probably his blood vessels, etc., etc. And the high pitching sound was described to him as being his nervous system. We learn later it's probably his tinnitus that he could hear. But it's this. I'm thinking about. Well, I mean, drone music is the wrong description, and it's also it's due to my lack of specific knowledge and vocabulary to talk about music and sound art. But I'm thinking about this being what's the English word? The Norwegian word would be altoppslukende. Altomslukende, something which completely surrounds you. Entangled. Now I'm thinking more of being in the belly of something. I'm thinking more of when it completely consumes you. And I'm wondering how, because that's how I think your description of being there sounds like. Like it was time consuming, but it was also consumed all of your capability, all your time, all your, if you like, assets. And you knew you had very short time. And I was wondering, or rather differently, would you consider what you did at Høyblokka, and maybe in relation to your praxis in general, if it's a type of documentary work? I guess that's a yes or no, or you could also expand.
Yeah, but that's the questions I always don't want, you know. But
it's recording sound.
But I guess I have to answer, and I have thought a bit about it, because is it like authentic, and is it documentary, and what is documentary, and is anything authentic? Because when you record something, you use a mic, you use a recorder.
Yeah, so the instrument, what you're
it's
using,
mediated,
reflects
you know,
what
and
you,
also mic placements. So it's, I would say, yes, it's documentary, but as I've also said earlier, I call it a portrait, because it gives me artistic freedom to express it in my way. But for example, the track we just heard, the bouncing sounds you hear that comes in and out is the wind that was there when I was there. So I haven't, it's not like edited. But I did some adjustments, and it's also multi-track. So I put in like actually the actual timeline is how do you say, not authentic, but yeah, it was that timeline.
Yes.
But I have, for example, I adjusted the bass separately,
Yeah.
and then I adjust the mid frequency separately and the high frequency separately, and then I mix it together again.
Yeah, so you have recorded, you used the section you recorded, so the 8 minutes we're hearing is the 8 minute you recorded, but obviously you've done adjustment according to your, well, your artistic needs or your artistic visions, if you like. I'm wondering, would you, to the audience, would you like to first have some questions, then end with a last listening session, or have a listening session and then some questions? Let's then do, are there any questions from the audience? Tor.
Should I just say it out loud? No, it's fine, it's fine.
Say it out loud.
Because
You can also
talk
think
about
it. If you can think it, maybe we could.
I've been trying. No, it's because you're talking about you specifically wanted to be called a sound artist, right?
Yeah.
That's not. What do you think there's a specific quality that is unique to sound that is not in other art, or why do you want to be called a sound artist in itself?
Because I work with sound.
2 seconds. Just
Okay,
since
sorry.
we're streaming, the question was what was specific to sound, so that why would you like to call? Well, I'm paraphrasing, but called a sound artist.
Okay, I guess I have to answer again, but it's basically because I work with sound. It's not that I find, you could, as a visual artist, you could just say you're a visual artist and you can work with whatever kind of material. But and I do also work with other kind of material, but I guess it's a title I feel comfortable in. It's like kind of craftsmanship, or.
Let me try to ask that from a different perspective. Would you be able to do what you did with Y in another medium? Let's say film. Would that fall as easy for you?
Let me turn that around, because when I got the idea, I thought of how can you document or kind of register this place in a way that has not been done so much before, and then to do sound recording and to do a kind of sound archaeology is something that's very foreign to us, and I just thought it was a good idea. And what happens with it later, I don't know. This document exists, so even when I'm not here, hopefully there are record players, we don't know, but it will be around, and people can listen to maybe not the authentic atmosphere that was there, but some of the traces that I experienced when I was there.
Any other questions? I think we should then end this session with playing the last track, which is the second track on the D side of the LP, and it's still from Høyblokka. It's the Justice Department, second floor. It's 4:56 a.m. on the 30th of October 2017, and then we'll literally end with the listening. So when the listening is over, also this conversation is over. So I'll just in advance say thank you, Alexander, for releasing this record, and also for you guys to attend. That you did attend, thank you, and also for those who were present digitally, thank you as well. We'll just end the stream after we've done the listening session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeg glemte å si det, du kan jo kjøpe plater hvis dere vil.
Tror du han skriver?
Ja.